This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
أطلقت إيران أول قمر صناعي محلي الصنع إلى مدار حول الأرض. وقال التلفزيون إن
Iran has launched its first locally made satellite. According to Iranian television, the Omid satellite was launched for scientific purposes using the Iranian satellite launcher, Safir-2. This has coincided with the celebrations of the 30th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Our reporter in Iran, Muhammad Hassan al-Bahrani, has prepared the following report.
During this dark night and from the heart of the Iranian desert, Iran has launched its first satellite, Omid, or Hope. Iran is hoping that the whole world, friends and foes, would watch the first Iranian experiment in launching satellites. What is important about the experiment is the fact that it is totally Iranian. The Iranian president said that launching the satellite is a message of peace from those who have been calling for justice. He also stressed that what his country has achieved debunks claims that the Islamic Revolution of Iran has failed in achieving the desired process.
This scientific progress that has been achieved by Iranian scientists is a big gift to our nation. The message behind this big scientific achievement is a message of peace and reconciliation. Our enemies thought that our regime would not achieve scientific progress without relying on them. This shows they were wrong.
The launching of the first satellite means that Iran is serious about pursuing the political requirements of a modern and strong state. It reflects an Iranian willpower towards pursuing the trends of international modernization, despite the siege imposed on Tehran. This also reflects a wish to deal with Iranian issues at such a high level, and not in the framework of politically motivated conditions.
والواضح أن إيران بإطلاقها قمرها الصناعي الأول تحاول استكمال عناصر قوتها العلمية والعسكرية.
By launching its first satellite, Iran is trying to complete the elements of its scientific and military capability. This news comes after Iran made important progress in the construction of its nuclear program and the production of missiles. The decision-making center in Iran believes that the regime of the Islamic Republic will not be able to avoid the threats of others unless it depends on a self-sufficient countering force. A satellite launch, a nuclear program, and a growing military capability. This is how the scene appeared in Iran. This news comes 30 years after the founding of the regime of the Islamic Republic. Amidst this, Iranians are sending a message addressed to whom it may concern, which reads, "Deal with us by what we're worth." Mohammed Hassan, Al Jazeera, Tehran.
Top story this hour, Iran has successfully launched its first homemade satellite named Omid into space. We have more on that.
Iran successfully placed its first domestically made satellite into orbit. The satellite, called Omid, which means hope in Persian, was carried into space by indigenously made satellite carrier Safir-2, a modified version of Safir-1, which was successfully test-launched back in August 2008. Iran's national satellite Omid is capable of orbiting the Earth 15 times in 24 hours. The Omid satellite is a lightweight telecommunications satellite weighing almost 25 kilograms. The satellite has remote sensing, satellite telemetry and geographic information system technology, as well as remote and ground station data processing. The whole system has been built by Iranian scientists.
Omid satellite has a two-stage system. One of the most important parts of the satellite is its launch pad. All the satellite trackings, flight tests, and whatever which is related to the launch were successfully carried out by Iranian scientists.
The launch proved successful when the pre-recorded message of President Ahmadinejad was beamed back to the earth.
ملت عزیز ایران، فرزندان شما اولین ماهواره بومی را در مدار زمین قرار دادند. با یاد خدا و نام ولی عصر علیه السلام و برای بسط یگانه پرستی، عدالت و صلح، حضور رسمی جمهوری اسلامی در فضا در تاریخ ثبت شد.
Iran is planning to send its first astronaut into space within a decade, and the launch of satellite Omid has paved the way for the mission to get accomplished.
According to Iran's aerospace organization Reza Taghipour, Iran has plans to put a series of satellites into space by 2010 to aid natural disaster management programs and improve telecommunications. The launch of satellite Omid came as Iran is celebrating the 30th victory anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. With this launch, Iran became the 8th country in the world which has domestically built satellite in space. Salman Kujuri, Press TV, Simnan.
Well, still with that news, the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution has thanked all Iranian experts involved in the Omid satellite project. In response to a letter by President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei hailed the attempts of all scientists and officials which led to the successful launch of the very first Iranian-made satellite. The leader called the launch another indication the Islamic Revolution has been on the right path toward its hopes and aspirations. Meanwhile, the United States, France, Britain and Germany have expressed concern about Iran's launch of its first homemade satellite. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesman Robert Wood said the launch could possibly lead to the development of ballistic missiles. The French Foreign Ministry spokesman Eric Chevalier says Paris is worried Tehran may use the technology to deliver warheads. German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier has called Iran's achievement a worrying development. In London, the British Foreign Office Minister Bill Rammel voiced serious concerns over Iran's intentions. A U.S.-led bloc, accompanied by Britain, France and Germany, opposes Iran's nuclear program on grounds it is meant for military purposes. Global monitoring agencies such as the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, have repeatedly testified the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. You're here with us on Press TV. The United Nations says more than 2,100 civilians have been killed in Afghanistan in the year 2008. The number has risen by 40% compared to that in 2007. Violence in that country is at its peak since the U.S.-led overthrow of the Taliban back in 2001. Afghanistan is observing daily conflicts between Taliban militants on the one side and Afghan and foreign troops on the other. Hundreds of U.S. and NATO-led forces have been carrying out daily operations in the country, killing many civilians. The attacks have provoked anger among Afghans and resentment against the presence of foreign troops.
انتخب الزعيم الليبي معمر القذافي الذي سبق أن لقب بملك ملوك إفريقيا رئيس.
In Addis Ababa, the African Union Summit elected Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, who was previously dubbed as the King of Kings, as the African Union chief for 1 year. Some leaders in the African continent had reservations about Gaddafi's effort to establish the United States of Africa, but still voted for him to lead the African Union as a way to establish a political balance between different African regions.
During a closed session between representatives from 53 African countries at the annual summit of the African Union in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was elected to the African Union chief for 1 year. This gives Northern Africa a role in leading the African Union, a role that Gaddafi has long expressed his desire to take over. Gaddafi has reiterated for years that Libya is an African country and that it has left the Middle East behind. On several occasions, regions. He said that most of Libya's problems come from Arab-related problems. The Libyan leader has been trying to establish a large African Union using the geographic location and economic power of his country. He has established a large network of political and economic relations with leaders in the Black Continent with the objective of achieving a large union, which he views as the only way to get rid of the chronic poverty and illnesses that have afflicted Africa. He wants to transform the African continent into an international center of power that is not subject to Western intervention. This explains why he reiterated his suggestion of establishing the United States of Africa at the Addis Ababa summit. However, South Africa, which is already one of the regional economic powerhouses in the African continent, did not like the idea and said that it was not practical. This explains why a middle solution was reached by announcing that the African Union Summit has agreed on replacing the African Union Commission with an authority rather than an immediate pan-regional government as was proposed, and to expand the power of this new authority.
We concluded that we will replace the African Union Commission with an authority rather than an immediate pan-regional government due to lack of conditions needed to consider the body as a government.
The new head of the African Union, Muammar Qaddafi, whose ideas have generated wide controversy for a long time, seems to be determined to use his new post to continue his road to the United States of Africa.
The French Élysée presidential palace witnessed a long day of diplomatic maneuvers lasting throughout the night. The meeting focused on the Palestinian issue and ways to help the Gaza ceasefire hold. The U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, George Mitchell, the Qatari Prime Minister, Hamad bin Jassim al-Jaber al-Thani, and the Palestinian President, Mahmoud Abbas, all arrived consecutively at the French Élysée presidential palace. During the three-way meeting, a disagreement ensued between Qatar and the Palestinian Authority over a call made by France to open a channel of negotiations between the EU and Hamas. Our correspondent, Mohamedou Mossi, reports from Paris.
Was it a coincidence that the Palestinian file tops the agendas of the three summits at the French Élysée presidential palace? The Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, told the French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, that the Palestinian Authority opposes the French efforts to open up to Hamas before achieving Palestinian reconciliation.
First of all, we see Hamas as part of the Palestinian people. Hence, we must negotiate with them. We must reach a solution with Hamas through a national unity government and through elections. However, what Hamas has recently called for, which is to replace the PLO, is further complicating the issues, and we will not accept it under any circumstances.
Meanwhile, Paris believes they must benefit from Qatari diplomacy and the good relations between Doha and Hamas. It also believes that Hamas shouldn't be sidelined from the peace efforts and must be included in the heart of any initiatives proposed in the region. This is how the French-Qatari negotiations have started.
The Palestinians must take a position because this issue concerns them. It's true the issue concerns the Arabs as well, but that is secondary. It's very important the Palestinians focus their attention on national reconciliation. They must refrain from trying to isolate or replace one another. They must come to a consensus. They are one Palestinian nation, and we will respect and support them if they come into agreement with one another.
The Élysée presidential palace is seeking to offer a new direction that will lead to bringing Hamas and the Palestinian resistance factions together in the peace process. This will take place after opening direct and indirect channels of negotiations among the Palestinian factions.
The French diplomacy through the Egyptian and the Qatari political gates is trying to convey a message to Hamas, which reads, if you want to be part of the national government, you must take positive steps towards Israel and recognize it. Recognizing Israel is one of the conditions imposed by the Europeans and the U.S.
The U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, George Mitchell, also had his share of the French-sponsored diplomatic maneuvering. Mitchell highlighted the outcome of his Mideast tour. Paris welcomed its visitors and received their letters. They have come from all levels, local, regional, and international, and they have all said their piece. One question remains: what's next? Mohamedou Mossi, Dubai TV, Paris.
Meanwhile, a top Hamas delegation arrived last night at Cairo for a two-day visit. The delegation will hold talks with the head of Egyptian intelligence services, Omar Suleiman. During the meeting, Hamas is expected to express its position on the implementation of the ceasefire, which is set to take effect on February 5th, and the Palestinian National Dialogue is set to take place on February 22nd.
A European delegation visiting Gaza expressed its shock for the systematic destructive behavior of the Zionists against civilians and public property. The delegation said that the number of war crimes is the reason why they decided to visit Gaza. The delegation also condemned the assassination of Palestinian officials, including the Interior Minister Saad al-Siam, saying that these assassinations are ugly crimes against the Palestinian people's representatives.
The savageness of the latest attack in Gaza is the reason why we decided to come here. We wanted to look at the situation here ourselves.
Parliament member Ismail Al-Shaqra received the delegation and stressed the importance of bringing the occupation's military and political leaders to justice for the war crimes they have committed against the Palestinians in Gaza.
The parliament members who are the true representatives of the Palestinians were arrested. The European nations who understand and respect democracy must bring these criminals before the International Court of Justice.
هذا وتوافق اليوم الذكرى الثالثة لفوز حركة المقاومة الإسلامية حماس في انتخابات المجلس التشريعي الفلسطيني.
Today marks the third anniversary of Hamas's landslide victory in the parliamentary elections, which enabled Hamas to form the 11th and the 12th Palestinian governments. Hamas was subjected to a siege and its leaders were assassinated, but the movement remains steadfast until this very moment.
The Islamic movement of Hamas has faced many challenges since the first day it entered the Palestinian parliament. They won transparent elections, which were observed by American and European international observers. The most important obstacles facing Hamas are the Zionist arrest campaigns, which have affected all of the parliament members representing Hamas, including the ousted parliament speaker Aziz Dweik, who is still behind bars. Another obstacle is when senior leaders of the Palestinian Authority declared a war on Hamas. This war was intended to undermine the movement's ability to present the Palestinians abroad, as well as creating sabotage, chaos, and security breakdowns in the West Bank and Gaza. This was done with the backing and support of the Americans and Zionists.
حيث كان ذلك بدعم من الأمريكيين والصهاينة كما اغتالت فرق
Death squads from the Fatah movement and the Palestinian Authority assassinated a number of Hamas's leaders and its members with the objective of weakening the Palestinian National Unity Government. The occupation did not spare any effort and has never stopped their war on Hamas in the West Bank and Gaza. It has carried out several military operations with the objective of eliminating the resistance, last of which was the war in Gaza. The occupation, however, has failed on all fronts, and Hamas is still ruling in Gaza, based on the democratic will of the Palestinians. Public support for Hamas is now at its highest.
Nick was talking about Afghanistan there, and certainly decades of war in that country have left the health service there in ruins. It's especially bad for pregnant women. Afghanistan has some of the highest maternity and infant mortality rates in the world. Teresa Bow reports now from the Children's Hospital in the capital, Kabul, where babies and mothers are at risk from a lack of the most basic supplies.
Over 50 babies in an area meant to treat only 30. This is the desperate situation in the Indira Gandhi Children's Hospital in Kabul.
This is for one baby, but unfortunately, as I said before, we do not have enough warmers, and we are putting 2 or 3 babies in one warmer.
Doctors told us that between 4 and 5 newborns die every day here. Many of them are sick with pneumonia because of the cold weather. For these children, the lack of medicines and heaters are turning out to be deadly. Many of these children were born in their homes, and doctors here tell us that what makes the situation even worse is that many of these women come from outside the capital because they do not have the necessary resources to treat their children in their hometowns. But the newborns are not the only ones suffering. We're told there are no surgical instruments, no disinfectants to treat the wounded, and not enough medicines. Afghanistan has the second highest maternal mortality rate in the world, after Sierra Leone. Sweeta says she's 8 months pregnant, and she was recently diagnosed with a cyst that could complicate the child's birth. This is my 8th month of pregnancy, and I have a cyst, she says. And doctors told me that if you don't operate, you're going to risk your life and your baby's life. I cannot afford an operation because I have no one to earn and pay for that. There is no money for it. Dr. Abdul Qadir Kajar says the hospital is in an emergency situation, that even though their main source of aid comes from India, more international help is needed.
Theoretically, there is too much proposal made for help of Afghanistan, but nobody is help us. But practically, we need to help us. But the patient who can, he have money in their hand, they can go to the Pakistan or other countries like India or Turkey. The patient, they didn't have money, you know, they will be die.
But among so much tragedy, one case has given people here hope. Wajia is 6 years old and is paralyzed. 3 months ago, her house was attacked by criminals. She and her brother were shot. But days ago, an NGO offered to take her to Germany for an operation. My son lost his ear and he cannot hear. I hope someone can help him too, says their mother. Wajia is a rare exception, but for those who have to stay, survival continues to be the challenge. In a country where tragedy continues to be a part of everyone's life. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Kabul.
Iraq's Minister of Human Rights, Wajdan Salim, said that her ministry will soon issue its special annual report regarding the conditions of prisons and detention centers. The report is intended to inform the public at the national and international levels on the conditions of prisoners held in Iraqi prisons. In another related development, the Iraqi Minister of Human Rights announced that nearly 304 Iraqis killed during the Second Gulf War have not yet been identified.
The Iraqi Ministry of Human Rights is seriously seeking to employ a mechanism which will allow the citizens to easily access information pertaining to the welfare and conditions of their relatives being held in Iraqi prisons and detention centers. The ministry is also considering ways to help ease up the process of searching.
We have completed the 2008 report on the state of prisons and detention centers in Iraq. We will submit the report to the appropriate authorities next week. A copy of the report will be forwarded to the Office of the Prime Minister. In addition, a copy will be sent to 5 other ministries, namely the Ministry of Justice, the Interior and Defense Ministries, the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Health. We will also submit a copy of the report to the legal councils and to the State Prosecutor's Office. The ministries will have an opportunity to respond to the report and to express their opinions regarding its findings. We employed the same mechanism as last year. We will gather the reactions of various ministries and attach a copy to the report before announcing it.
During an interview on Al-Iraqiya channel, Minister of Human Rights Wajdan Salim confirmed that the effects left behind the mass graves, wars and oppressive laws of the former Iraqi regime have prompted the government to seek ways to compensate the victims of such atrocities. Salim said that the Iraqi government will provide aid to that segment of society, which includes the families of the martyrs and the prisoners.
We will help the families of those who have been martyred during the Iraq-Iran War and the Second Gulf War. Nearly 304 of those martyrs, who have not been identified by their relatives, are being kept at the Center for Martyrs in the area of Zubair. We have made another announcement in which we gave a specific time for the relatives of these martyrs to come forward and claim them. Otherwise, they will be buried at Hassan al-Basri Cemetery in the area of Zubair. Their burial arrangements will be held in accordance with the Islamic Sharia laws and in the presence of a witness. The witness will compile all information related to each martyr, including a case number, which will help expedite the identification process. The record will be kept at the Martyrs Claim Center in the area of Zubair in the city of Basra.
The efforts exerted by the Ministry of Human Rights of providing information that will help seek justice to the victims of terror are another way taken by the government to help ensure the success of the Iraqi National Project. From the headquarters of the Ministry of Human Rights in Baghdad, أحمد الرباعي العراقية.
Meanwhile, the spokesman of the Ministry of Immigration and Displacement, Karim al-Saidi, said that the number of Iraqis wishing to immigrate to other countries has significantly decreased. Al-Saidi said that the High Commissioner for the Refugees in Syria confirmed that the number of Iraqi refugees in Syria has recently decreased. The number has significantly decreased despite the fact that some are trying to hamper the return of the refugees in order to use them as a bargaining card during the upcoming parliamentary elections. Al-Saidi said that his ministry will continue to work towards bringing back all the refugees, especially those in Syria, where they are facing pressure. He further said that his ministry will permanently close the refugee file after the last Iraqi refugee returns home.
Only 2 weeks after assuming the position of President of the United States, Barack Obama has given his administration a new image by his swift actions and diligent work, making many decisions affecting domestic and international policy. His first television interview with Al-Arabiya increased his popularity among Americans and the world.
Barack Obama, who opened the White House doors less than 2 weeks ago, has taken quick and practical steps forward by making decisions and issuing executive orders. He has decisively changed the tone and the direction of the American administration. All this in just the past 2 weeks.
Hello, America!
ففي يومه الأول كرئيس للولايات المتحدة أصدر تعليماته للوكالة. On the first day as President of the United States, he told federal agencies to be more prepared to provide information to the public, and he called for changing how the Freedom of Information Act is interpreted.
وبعد يومين من توليه مهامه كرئيس أصدر أوباما قرارين ينصان.
After just 2 days as president, Obama issued 2 orders to close Guantanamo within 1 year and to put restrictions on controversial methods used by the Central Intelligence Agency when interrogating suspects and wanted individuals.
في التحقيق مع المطلوبين والمشتبه بهم.
The process whereby Guantanamo will be closed no later than 1 year from now.
في يومه الثالث قام أوباما برفع الحظر الذي فرضته الإدارة.
On the third day, Obama lifted the abortion gag rule that was imposed by the previous administration to prohibit federal funds going to agencies that actively promote family planning outside the United States. These agencies provide health information, abortion-related services, and funding for research on abortion.
ولتحسين صورة الولايات المتحدة.
To improve the image of the United States among Arabs and Muslims, Obama reiterated his attention to the Middle East region by appointing George Mitchell as the new U.S. envoy to the Middle East, who took a tour to many Arab countries.
والذي قام بجولة في عدد من الدول العربية.
President Barack Obama has made a dramatic move, giving his first formal TV interview not to an American network.
ورغم أن القنوات الفضائية العالمية كانت في سباق.
While international satellite channels were in a race for time to obtain the first interview with Obama, the U.S. president chose Al-Arabiya to interview him first. This was interpreted as demonstrating the president's determination to build bridges with Arabs and Muslims.
But
I think that what you'll see is somebody who is listening, who is respectful.
وبعد أسبوع واحد سافر أوباما إلى.
After 1 week, President Obama went to Capitol Hill to meet with Republican House and Senate members to convince them to support his plan to protect the economy. Obama gained the support of the House of Representatives for his U.S. economic recovery plan, valued at $825 billion, which includes emergency spending and tax cuts. Mayul Mideast, Al-Arabiya.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.